Okay, welcome to another week of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dashi Miller here from Warrior Concepts. Of course, you know that. I apologize to those of you who you're on a platform that like this gets picked up on right away, but I've been told by some folks that there's a lag in some of the platforms, and so while they've kind of accepted it, uh, they'd like if I could just adjust things a little bit so that when it kicked on for them, I wasn't in the middle of a sentence or something like that. So that's why we get to stare at each other for a couple of seconds if you're on one of the faster platforms. Anyway, I don't know if it's the faster platform or if it's internet connection. I don't know. But here we are, right? So this week we are discussing, and have been since Monday's Kuden podcast episode, we've been discussing this idea of Sayu. Sayu. It's an old way of saying Hidari and Migi, although Japanese left and right kind of get described a little bit different or get laid out differently, right? So if we're using the old style, same kanji, right? So if we lay it out Sayu, the old style, then it is left and right, okay? But if we say Migi and Hidari, same kanji, same directions, right? Then we say right and left in those orders. Anyway, so we've been talking about something that's conspicuously missing, right? If we know what to look for and we're actually questioning things, right? And we're listening to Hatsumi Sensei's other lessons, okay? Then there's some things that are missing, right? Hatsumi Sensei has said that the scrolls are incomplete, right? And I know, I too, right? A long time ago, used to believe that if I could get my hands on the scrolls, then like I'd have all the answers, right? But I believed that because I thought that the scrolls were like I think about Western academic textbooks. If I get the book and I read the book, well, what the hell do I need the teacher for? Okay? But Hatsumi Sensei has said again and again that the scrolls are incomplete, right? To fill in the gaps, we need the kuden. We need the oral transmission from teacher to student to fill in the blank spaces, okay? But if we're just running around collecting lists, we're just collecting direct Densho translations, these are out there in different places, then we might be missing some things, okay? So I'm going to focus on a particular Kamae today, Hoko no Kamae, right? I could have picked any one of other three. If you caught Kuden, great, you're already ahead of the curve. If not, you can always go to the YouTube channel or onto the Kuden podcast Facebook page and just scroll down a little bit and find that. On the YouTube channel, you have to click the live link, and then these Whiteboard Wednesdays and Kudens kind of leapfrog over each other because those are the only things I do live over there. Okay, so anyway, what we're going to do, and please remember, please remember that this is a strategy and tactics class, right? This one, I'm probably going to demonstrate a couple of things, upper body wise anyway, more than I normally do, but this is not a technical mechanical demonstration class. This is about understanding what's behind everything that makes it work. Okay, so well, let's start off with a problem like I normally do, right? Okay, most students, most practitioners, including instructors, right? Farther we get away from those late 70s and early 80s, the more things kind of get watered down. It's like playing a bad game of telephone for anybody that's old enough to know what that game is like, where you have something that you specifically say to the next person in line, and they're supposed to repeat that same exact thing to the next person in line. Next person seems pretty cut and dry, right? Except that what you find is that if you ever play it, by person 3 or 4, it's not the same. And by the time it comes all the way around, and the person next to you on this side tells you what should come back is the exact same message. But it never does, ever. And it's not even like a little bit close, right? Sometimes it's like drastically off, right? And passing the stuff on is that way, especially if you have folks that are guessing along the way, or they're going to use their own words or put their own spin, and the next thing you know, or they miss a word, and then it just cascades, right? So, but most students, right, see Kamae, even after all these decades, still see Kamae as fixed poses or fighting stances. Okay, the word for stance in Japanese is dachi. Right, kamae and dachi, not only are they different kanji, but they're named after different parts of the body. Right, dachi are named for the position of the legs from the hips down, which is why we have horse stance, cat stance, things like that. Right, and kamae are typically named for the position of the torso and the upper limbs, although in ninjutsu, it's a three-body, whole body, and internal to external kind of thing. It's a holistic kind of thing, right? But those who are looking at these things like they're just another stylized replacement, right? Like ninjutsu style does it this way, but Shotokan does it this way, but Goju does it this way, but, right? When they do that, they miss the duality, right? They miss that these kamae have different faces, okay? And we're going to talk about those, right? We'll start with this Sayu. We'll talk about Migi and Omote. Migi and Hidari, and we'll talk about Ura and Omote, right? These what seem to be contrasting things. We'll even come back to this little guy, which I'm sure everybody recognizes, okay? But this duality is built into every kamae, okay? Worse than missing it, right, is they stop at shallow translations, okay? And I'll talk about one of these here shortly, right, where you're supposed to train both sides equally, right, left and right side. Well, that makes sense, okay? And if we look at left and right, well, okay, left side, right side, okay, fantastic, makes sense, right? But then we run into something like the Kuraidori scroll in the Koto Ryū, right? It's one of our 9 schools, okay? 5 kamae are listed, right? These 5 kamae are Migi Seigan no Kamae, Hidari Seigan no Kamae, so right Seigan no Kamae, left Seigan no Kamae. And then the other 3 are Hoko no Kamae, Bobi no Kamae, Hira no Kamae. And this is what they have, right? But the question is do we really just have a list of 5 kamae? And if the scroll is called Kuraidori, catching the right space, catching the right moment, there's this thing that we're supposed to be taking, right? What the hell does stances have to do with that? Right? So there's 5 kamae listed, but only 2, right, specifically state right and left. Why? Right? If you caught Kuden, you're already ahead of the game. Okay? But why are Hoko, Bobi, and Hiri Chimonji no Kamae not listed Migi Hoko, Hidari Hoko, Migi Bobi, Hidari Bobi? This would really throw people off because it's flat forward, right? Right? But either way, right? Why not Migi? Why not Hidari? Or in the old sense, right? Yu Seigan no Kamae, Sa Seigan no Kamae. Okay? So, again, when we say Migi and Hidari, we always start with right first. Okay? There's a reason for that, but right, left. But be careful if you're just trying to translate these and overlay them. Okay? This is right and left. It's always Migi Hidari. Right? But Sayu is always left, right. Okay? Sensei, why do you keep pounding on that? Because I don't want people to make assumptions, dumb mistakes that cause them to miss the mark. Okay? This is not about being anal. This is about being correct. Okay? We have a hard enough time, well, not we, modern Japanese people have a hard enough time trying to understand and translate ancient Japanese. How much more difficult is it for us to translate an ancient Japanese concept into not just Western English, but Western thinking and thought? Okay? A really simple example of this, and I've mentioned it many times, is that Japanese people never go home. That doesn't mean they don't go home, right? To us, we know what that means, right? When we go home, right? But if you look at a Japanese sentence or you listen to a Japanese person, right, the word to go, okay, ikimasu, is not in there. Okay? They don't ikimasu. Okay? They don't go home. They return home, right? Because home is a base. Often, if they work at an office or they own their own business or whatever, right? They don't go to the office either. They don't go to work, right? They return because it's another base, right? And then everything else radiates out from there. So if we get confused about something that simple or miss that part, say translating Japanese to English and English to Japanese is not just about word substitution, because each group thinks about things differently. Just like warriors think about things differently than the everyday person. For example, okay, Hatsumi Sensei has taught on this in the past, right? Warrior respect is not the same as the respect that mommy or grandma or teachers or whatever taught us growing up. Okay? They're both very important. Okay? One is on one side, one's on the other. They're both very, very important. Okay? But the respect that we think of when we run into phrases like a warrior respects even his enemy. Okay? And there are some of these everyday things in that definition, but it's not the same. Okay? What do we mean by respect? Well, treat other people the way you want to be treated. Those kind of things, right? Treat other people, places, and things like they're as important to you as you are to you, that kind of thing, right? But if we take that strictly and go onto the battlefield, you think the bad guy's not going to cut you down because you love all humanity and don't want to cut him down. Well, there's a problem, okay? Warrior respect is the respect where I respect, I understand his desire to do me harm. And so I position myself relative to him to make that very difficult. Right? So we can say I respect something, I see the value in it, or I show value toward it. But we also say things like, oh, I can respect his position. He can't come in my house. He can live any way he wants. Okay? But I respect his position. I respect his right to live that way. So it's a different, there's a nuance. This is important. Okay? So why? Right? I'm going to talk about why this may have been from a couple of different perspectives farther down, but this is very, very important. Okay? So today we're going to look at Hoko no Kamae, specifically this Kamae, right? Not as a fixed shape, right? But as what we might call a family of adaptive postures, okay? And how the Sa-yu principle, this left-right principle, inside it reveals or highlights, right, this hidden duality behind all Kamae, okay? All Kamae, right? So first, let's jump down here a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see this. I had this structured differently just before I went live and decided that I wanted to rearrange things a little bit. So let me do something here with contrast so it stands out a little better, right? So we're going to take a look at, I was going to write the kanji and whatnot. I don't have the space, okay? So we're going to look at the meanings behind the kanji used to write these things, okay? Now, Hoko is just the two syllables, right? There's a kanji for each. Hoko. But Hoko sometimes is called hoi. There are two kanji here. One for this ho, which is the same as this one, and then this e, right? So we'll take a look at these so that we get a better understanding. Because remember, the kanji were chosen because of what they were trying to convey, right? You can look up all kinds of kanji that are pronounced ho and ko and slam them together. But that doesn't, just because we can say Hoko doesn't mean that, okay? It's kind of like if we were to say doko, like in Doko no Kamae, right? Angry tiger, reclining tiger, that kind of thing, doko, right? But doko, written a different way, in Japanese means where. Like, where is that thing? Doko desu ka? Where is it? Right? So we have to be careful, right? Sensei, that's really tough. Like, we don't do that in English. Yeah, we do. Okay? You have two bananas, right? He has two bananas too, also, right? and we're going to go to the store to get 2 bananas. Yeah, we do. Do it all the time. Okay, we just don't notice because we're fluent, right? So hoko, right? This whole kanji, also pronounced daku, right, means to embrace. Embrace, Jeffrey. Embrace. There we go. Okay, to embrace, like give him a big hug, right? Let's see here, right? To hold. It can also mean to carry. Okay. What else I have? Oh, and to wrap around. You know, like a hug. Okay. For those of you who've been taught that the translation of hoko, like I was way back in the day, that it means open bear, doesn't translate to open bear. But I can see where somebody could use that as an expedient because you look like a bear that comes up on its haunches to just it's going to wrap around the person or its dinner, right? Okay. So, but whole, this kanji can also imply surrounding, enveloping, or protecting something. Okay. In a martial context, it's like wrapping it up, right? Wrapping up or covering the opponent's attack lines, those kind of things. Okay. Coal, this is not the same coal as in like tiger or small or child, not the same. Okay. This coal is the same kanji used to write kamae. As a matter of fact, it can be used alone to say kamae, but there's usually a kana that comes after it to conjugate it for the e part at the end, right? So kamae, right? So kama, kama, right? So this means, ironically, right? Posture. This is the exact same one, right? Posture, position, all kinds of things in there. But the one I want to call out is setup or readiness. Okay. So hoko, even though we have hoko no kamae, right? The no kamae is almost redundant when we say hoko because that kanji is the same one as in kamae. So it would be like saying embracing position. But we could also borrow some of these other things. Okay. So um, the kanji, again, it often appears in martial terms like kamae, right? And that's where people some karate lineages and whatnot, even though they're using the stance idea, the dachi idea, they've chosen to use the term kamae. So is there bleed over? Yeah, but the kanji themselves point to something a little bit different, right? So hoko itself, right? Hoko, hoko. Okay, so it literally carries the sense of like encompassing posture, embracing position, that kind of thing, right? To hold and surround in readiness, right? It's almost like you're putting blinders on the person, or you're creating a sense of tunnel vision, right? You are you're controlling the bubble between the two of you, okay? And that's all that matters, right? So hold that idea, okay? Hoi, right? Again, first kanji is made up of two kanji. Hoi is the same kanji as ho, right? So ho is the same, right? To encompass, to hold, that kind of thing, right? But that uh, other kanji, which almost looks like a structure within a paradigm, or like a hut inside of somebody's yard or property, or a basket sitting inside of a box, right? So um, this this hoi means uh, in to encircle something or to surround it. To encircle or surround. So now the question is, what are we encircling and what are we surrounding? Well, does Sensei his body, That's not always true, right? Kuzushi, balance breaking, not always about breaking the balance of the body. Sometimes it's about breaking their plan, their agenda. It's about breaking their mind, which is called confusion or frustration, right? Those kind of things. It's not. It's this is not a one and done kind of thing. Okay, so hoi is often used to emphasize this sense surround, right? This this was explained to me a certain way a long time ago, right? When we're thinking of Hoko in this context, in this hoi no kamae context, it's like I'm holding up a wet blanket and I'm going to throw it on or wrap it around a burning person, a person that's on fire. Okay? That kind of idea, right? That kind of encircling, right? We're trying to smother the heat. We're trying to smother the fire, right? So, um, so that's a place to start. We're gonna come back to some of these other things here in a minute. But to do that, we need to look at this Sa-yu. And I just use Sa-yu because that's the kick I'm on this week, starting with Kuden, right? But I alternate them. So Migi Hidari, sometimes you'll see it written, okay? Sa-yu, right? You could see sometimes it written Sa-yu Seigan no Kamae, or Sa-yu this particular Kamae, right? That means left and right, okay? But are we talking about directionality or something else? Okay? So we're going to look at Sa-yu. We'll come back to Migi and Hidari. Still the same thing, right? Left and right and left. It's the same. Okay? All right. So literally, Sa-yu. Left, right. Great. Everybody knows what the hell that means, right? My left hand, my right hand. Or as you're looking at me, hand on my left, hand on my right as you're looking. Right? So, but is it that simple? On the omode, on the obvious side of things, on the front facing base level, yeah, it's that simple. Okay. So if we're told that we have to be able to do our kamae or any kata or whatever, sa-yu, right? That means we have to be able to do it equally well on both sides. So just with kamae, right? Seigan ichimonji no kamae is left hand leading, okay? Or hidarite seigan no kamae. Now it's left hand, right? Migi or migite seigan no kamae, right hand leading. Nothing else changes. Nothing else changes, okay? But what does that mean where we have to be able to do it equally well on both sides? Let me tell you a story. In the Gato Sensei class one time, he was teaching on this, right? And everybody was going, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And he kind of looks over and he says, do you know what I mean by equally well? And I said, yes, Sensei. He looked at somebody else and he said, do you know what I mean by equally well? And they kind of had that look in their eyes. And he said, what I mean by equally well is a master teacher should be able to look at you from across the dojo and not be able to tell which is your strong side and your weak side, which is your good side, your bad side. Right? You're equally good on both sides. Okay? Everybody has a tell that is not, they always do things on their good side, on their strong side. They don't like working on the other side because that's their bad side. That's their weak side. Right? We're not allowed to have preferences, not allowed to have weak sides, or whatever. And that's because we can't always dictate the situation. We can rarely dictate the situation. And so when the bad guy comes in, which way is he coming? The closer to you he is in relationship, and I don't mean proximity, I mean family, friends, those kind of things, he knows what your strong and weak sides are. Anybody that's out to really get you is not coming in on your strong side. Okay? This is another one of those subtle differences, maybe not so subtle differences between real world combat and survival, like self-defense survival, and getting in a ring and already having things worked out where you do your thing, he does his thing. Most people are, right-handed. 7 to 9% of the population is a southpaw, left side dominant, whatever. So chances are you can fight the same way. Okay. but somebody's out to really get you. No do-overs, finish this thing. I wouldn't, if I knew you, I wouldn't let you do your easy, preferred, strong stuff. That's what this is all about. Tactical deception. Right? We have to understand that when we're not dealing with some Joe Schmo on the street or some other drunk in the bar on Friday night or whatever, where we bump shoulders and we're equally pissed off, we're equally disoriented, we're equally, good, relatively speaking, at fighting or willingness to fight and all that. I'm not talking about that. Okay, we don't need 1,000 or 2,000-year-old secrets to defend against everyday crap. Do what you do. Also from the Gato Sensei, don't confuse the inability to do good taijutsu, but winning anyway, as that's somehow different than just fighting. If we're not using the principles and concepts that this art is based on to do the winning, then we are just fighting. That doesn't mean that you can't win. Everybody wins doing whatever they do. Okay? But we don't need 1,000 or 2,000-year-old secrets. That's an Isuka Sensei lesson. Okay? To defend against crap or defend against, 2 or 3 steps outside the cave. Okay? All right. So, Sayu left and right. Deeper level here is Ura and Omote. Okay? Omote means frontal, obvious. It points to and is derived from the idea of the palm of the hand, right? The obvious side of the hand. It's a side that's easy for you to look at. Okay? Palm of the hand. Okay? Ura means back or hidden or adaptive. And it talks about the back of the hand. Right? I know him like I know the back of my hand. Most people don't know the back of their hand. You have to twist your arm, shoulder, and everything to look at the back of your hand. Okay? That's the part that's hidden. When you show somebody, when a magician shows you, nothing in my hand, there's always something hidden. There's always something hidden. There's always something hidden. Kind of an amateur magician myself. There's always, okay? But the brain is willing to accept this because we hold things in our hands. One of the first lessons I learned in this art as a white belt was ninja never use their hands to grab. Okay? Magicians, if they're holding something in their hand for you to see, their hands are shaped so they could be holding something else in their hand. Okay? We never take anything at face value. So omote is the obvious frontal. It's also the controlled, right? So let's call this the controlled, right? The ideal, right? This is the obvious. Okay? This is what it looks like. I'm not going to show you what anything looks like. I'm talking about whatever we assume something looks like. That's the omote. Okay. The ura is the messy, the chaotic, right? The unexpected. Unexpected. Might be nice if I could spell. Expected. There we go. Okay. This is the hidden, the not so obvious, it's disorder, right? That kind of stuff, right? So both sides have to be equal. We have to be able to operate in both realms. Okay. So the hidden layer here is that beyond equal dexterity, right? Can I do omote gyaku with one hand? Can I do it to them with the left? Whatever, okay? Every kamae has 2 faces, okay? There's the ideal, the controlled, the Migi version, okay? If you have access to the original Koto Ryū video that came out under the Quest banner from Hatsumi Sensei, I think it was even number 1, okay? In the kamae section, they show Migi Seigan no Kamae. Now, they show it right hand forward, okay? This way. I think it was Manaka Sensei demonstrating that. Right? He's in this position, right? And then they show Hidari Seigan no Kamae. Seno Sensei is demonstrating this thing, where it's up, like way stretched out, right? Leaning back, limbs are all outstretched and stuff, right? And so what ended up happening was a lot of people came up with this idea that on the right side, you do it one way, on the left side, you do it the other way. But back in the day, the video was narrated by Hatsumi Sensei in Japanese. So what I did was I passed it off to, sadly, I'm surrounded by universities. So I had a student who was from a Japanese family. And so he could translate things. And I said, here, report back. Okay. And what Hatsumi Sensei was describing was this ideal, and he didn't use these terms, but an oh shit moment. Okay. And I still have to be able to operate. Right? In the dojo, way too many people, when something drops away from the ideal, they stop their uke, they go, nah, let's start again. Right? Which is fine if you're just learning the kata and you're trying to get the moves right and the step by step. But once you know it, you got yourself in that mess, or you ended up in that mess, you got to get yourself out. There is no do-over. There is no ref to step in. There's nothing like that, right? So we need to be able to operate in both realms, okay? Ideal and controlled, as well as messy and chaotic. I shared a story during Kuden, briefly share this. When I was an Army cop, one time my partner and I got called to a drunken, disorderly situation at one of the units. This guy got himself plastered. He'd earned his black belt that day and went out celebrating with friends. One thing leads to another. He had already punched the duty officer. He's yelling racial slurs and all kinds of shit, right? So we show up. And something you should know about me, if you don't know it already, is I'm slightly taller than I am on your screen. What that means, I'm 5'6" and change. Why that matters is because the minimum height for a military policeman in the United States Army is 5'8", because the average height of a Western male is 5'8". Okay, so at least a little bit of equal footing there. So anybody that's taller, 6 foot, 6'2", whatever, they're only slightly taller than somebody who's 5'8". Okay, for me, right, 6'2", 6 inches taller, and it gets right. So anyway, so I'm the one that steps in to de-escalate and control this guy. See the position? Control this guy, right? One thing leads to another. Like, I'm controlling him, I'm de-escalating, we're just having a conversation. I get him to what I think is mellowed down, right? So where am I? I'm over here. The situation is over here. And in a step or two, he's suddenly nose to nose, which means that he's looking down at me this way, right? Which means that his mouth is right here. And I'm smelling Lynchburg, Tennessee mixed with stomach acid. If you've ever smelled that putrid, sour smell, I don't know about you, but to me, it's fucking disgusting, right? And I found myself saying, you've got 3 seconds to get out of my face. And before I realized what happened, I heard him say, 2-1000. And then I felt an uppercut come up between our bodies because he was in really close, right? And he hit me, and I rode that off. And then I just see these fists coming in, and I take up a Hoko to keep jamming these things. Not this, okay? Here I can grab him and hit him. This, all you can do is cover, okay? So I'm covering this stuff, and then it's just shit's happening. There's a officer yelling at me from this side, telling me to stop hitting him. I haven't hit him yet, not that I know of anyway, right? He's the one hitting me. And in the middle of all that, I yelled back at him, I'm not hitting him. And I'm still trying to not get my brains battered up, right? And so at a certain point, there was a feeling, because something clicked, and I realized that Mushadori was happening. Now, I didn't think in those terms, but I do remember having the feeling of, I know what to do. And whipped that on him, laid him out. So I went from that whole situation went from controlled, ideal, I'm in the authority position, we're controlling this thing, to all of a sudden it went messy and chaotic really fast. And then all of a sudden, in that chaos, I recognized an opportunity and then went right back to controlled, joint locks and whatnot to get him flipped over, get him in cuffs, keep him in a restrained position, that kind of thing, without needing anybody else to help. But again, it went back and forth. Okay, back and forth. So um, again, if I had it to do all over again, I would have been way more omote hoko and not just this is ura, this is sa, this is an adaptive form. Okay, but I would have been way more hoi no kamae, positioning myself. I mean, might even have exaggerated by being, hey, calm down, man. Okay, as if I were holding that blanket, that soaking wet blanket that, right, just wrap him up. Okay. So again, focus on this thing here, but we're going to have to come back to these, okay? Because this is going to look like I had a dream and came up with some shit, right? But I didn't, right? Because these are the only two that point out Migi and Hidari. Again, what gives? Okay? But we need to explore this. Okay? We need to explore this. So again, Hoko no Kamae is our crux for the day, right? So the base form of Hoko no Kamae, right, as I learned it, is this Hoi version. As a matter of fact, in the Togakure Ryu Nippo Taijutsu book, the one that's come to be known as the Tenshi Jin Ryaku no Maki, because that's the format. It's the Gyoko Ryu. It's funny, right? It's Ninpo Taijutsu, ninja's body art, but the Tenshi Jin Ryaku no Maki is borrowed from the way the Gyoko Ryu stuff is laid out, the Book of Heaven, Earth, and Mankind. Interesting, right? So, and then there's a synthesis of techniques from across the lineages. Anyway, not for today's class. Okay. In that book, Hatsumi Sensei calls Hoko no Kamae Hoi no Kamae. Or somebody mistranslated something. But anyway, right? So let's stay with this crux, okay? So Migi Hoko no Kamae. Migi Hoko, okay, is okay. That wet blanket. We're in a position, and my hands are positioned so that I'm controlling the bubble between he and I. And that bubble is dictated by his height and my height and his width and my width to the ground. So from top of my head to the top of his head, he's probably taller than me, right? From just outside my one shoulder to just outside his, same thing on the other side, to the ground. In this ideal position, nothing else matters. Now, ultimately, in a real fight, other shit matters. But what I have control of is this space. And so I take up a position, see it? Just outside my shoulder, top of head to floor. Okay? And then Hidari, if we go back to Sayu, right? The Nagato directionality kind of thing, right? Sa Migi Seigan, okay? Sa Hoko, right? Left side is forward because I'm covering certain things and moving the window, right? Migi Hoko, the window changes, okay? Hira Hoko no Kamae, just like Hira Ichimonji, flat, open, Ichimonji, one line. Hira Ichimonji, okay? Katate Ichimonji, or just Ichimonji, okay? So Hira Hoko, this way, okay? But again, I'm controlling that bubble, and then I'm controlling his options within the bubble. A lot of people don't like doing Hoko. A lot of people don't like doing Hira because, well, that's stupid. Who the hell opens himself up like that? He can punch you, he can kick you, he can grab you. Yeah, isn't that cool? Because the feeling in Hoko no Kamae, besides holding that wet blanket, ready to throw it on him, is anything you put in this space, I'm going to break it. Anything you put in this space belongs to me. Okay? It's a trap. It's a tactical deception. We're turning exposure into a trap. Okay? Now, I wouldn't be right up against somebody nose to nose and take up Hira or Hoko. They punch me before I can see it coming. So we're controlling the space between, right? But again, I need to be able to move freely and move. So Migi Hoko no Kamae, okay, is both that wet blanket posture, right? Smothering somebody's attack, right? Controlling their options, how they're going to get in. This is a weird angle, right? This is the same angle of the sword when we're wearing it in our belt. It comes across this way. That angle is the same as the angle of the lead arm in Gyoko Ryu Ichimonji no Kamae. That angle is the same angle as the long staff or the sword in Jodan Uke, right? For receiving something that's coming in, so it ricochets off and doesn't bash you or just skim off, and then they kill you with the next shot or whatever. Okay, the angle is really, really important. Okay, so a couple of variations on these things. Well, we'll get to the variations, right? So the base form. Okay, there are lessons that are being taught, and they're perfectly right. Different Japanese teachers tend to gravitate towards certain forms of Hoko no Kamae. Okay, we'll talk about three. Right, one I already did, which is way up here, way up. Okay, so I'm going to call this the open bear posture. Okay, it's like a bear that found you in the woods and you couldn't outrun your friend, and the bear is just going to come down on you. Okay, so again, this one, what you'll see or what you'll hear through the kuden is that this form is about making a smaller defender look bigger because it broadens and elongates the silhouette. Okay, not just at night. Okay, because when somebody's enraged and they're coming at you, their vision narrows. They're working from the reptilian brain, lower mammalian brain, right? That rage, that kind of stuff. So they're more keyed into shape and movement than they are about detail. So I'm going to look bigger, like I'm controlling more space because I'm controlling more space. Okay. Another one is to bring it down to the base model, but I'm going to turn my palms in. Okay. This is the blade receiving posture. Okay. Blade receiving posture. Might be nice if I can smell. Okay. All right. So blade receiving posture is this guy has a blade. I don't care if it's a sword, little pen knife, whatever, broken piece of glass. I don't want to be pointing my life-sustaining tubes at him. Because if I get cut here, my dying actions are going to be Spider-Man-like to try to shoot him in the eye. Maybe he runs away. I don't know. But I'm going to turn this way. Okay? Will I still get cut? Yeah, but I'm not going to be debilitated. And these muscles here are for opening the hand. Not only are there life-sustaining tubes in here that I need to protect with my life, the muscles in here contribute to doing that. So pick and choose our battles. Okay? So from here to here. Okay? And then there is we'll call it a blinder posture. Okay? A blinder posture where Hoko, we're doing it like this. Okay? Fingertips are slightly curled in to point directly at his eyes, okay, this way. But we've got this, like, I want to hug you. It'll be the last hug you ever get, but I want to hug you, kind of thing, right? So this is for narrowing, just like putting blinders on a horse. It's for narrowing his attention. Here, right? He has a hard time seeing or whatever, but it doesn't kind of block things over my shoulders and those kind of things, right? But here, right, I'm taking up more direct space on the eye line this way, okay? If I combine this with some words and some intent, and I'm dealing with somebody who maybe they're attacking somebody else, and I need to get him to come at me, okay? So I can save this other person, right? Maybe I can't safely insert myself in there, whatever, and I need to get him turned away so that the victim can run, okay? So what I might do is go, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, okay? So the gesture matches, the action matches, look at me, okay? I've been studying for a long time. This guy that I'm saving, we know how most people are, haven't studied at all. So give him his life back, get this guy. Now I can start to de-escalate, or I can handle things or whatever, okay? So which one's right and which one's wrong? See, that's where the arguments start to come in, because there's other forms of Hoko, Migi Hoko, but there's some gray area in here as well, okay? Because what we're really looking at doing, and you really need to catch the this week's Kuden to get more of this, but what we're really trying to do is ride right here. Both of these are always going on, but I need to be adept at both sides. So training has to take place on both sides so that I can live there. Okay? So I can live there. Right? So, but Hoko is so diverse, right? Oh, shit. Well, that looks like Doko no Kamae. Yeah, no, but it's not. Okay? It's just controlling perceptions. Okay? We could also call Hoko a high hira. Mid hira, hira, the way most people know it. And then Hachimonji no Kamae, figure eight posture, okay, is low hira. Again, controlling his options, what he sees open, those kind of things. Okay, very, very adaptive. Talk about that here as we wrap this up. What kind of time do I have? Okay, good. All right. So the lesson here is that these aren't new Kamae, right? They're tactical responses hidden inside Hoko. They're Henka. They're all Hoko, right? But they're situational. When I said in the beginning that most people see Kamae as fixed things, like stylized fighting stances, I mean, way too many people are arguing over whether Hoko's like this, or Hoko's like this, or Hoko's like this, or Hoko's like this, right? And I get it, right? The way it was introduced to them, right, tends to get stuck. It tends to become the baseline. This is called anchoring bias. We have to always be mindful of how our mind is doing things and how it works, because the mind is set up to create a quick baseline so it can assume things. That way we can solve things faster and get on to other things. But that's also why we have meditation and we have all these other systems and ways of training and zanshin and all those kind of things, so that if we set out to be average, we wouldn't be doing this. Even as a martial artist. Okay? Ninjutsu is way too deep and broad, and it's not even limited to just the fighting skills. That's one corner among all the stuff that 99.9% of people have tossed in the trash can. Okay? So then, what the hell is Hidari Hoko? Okay? There we go. So Migi Hoko, in any of these cases, Migi Hoko is really when we're balanced, we're calm, and we're in control. Hidari Hoko can still look like these things here, right? But Hidari Hoko is the Ura side of things, right? Again, it's when things are messy, right? So it could be leaning, it could be overextended, it could be appearing distressed, okay? So what if Hidari Hoko looked like this? Whoa, because he threw a kick or he came in with a knife at my gut. But since you said knife guarding, it should be like this. Yeah, if I had my fucking wits about me. But if this thing suddenly comes out and I need to shift to clear that, well, I'm going to get what I get. Okay. Or remember that calming position I was doing with this guy, right? It could just as easily be, whoa, 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 hey, hey, hey. Right. So more of a looks, it's overextended, but looks a little bit more distressed. Okay. Same as this one. Like, I don't need trouble. Okay. So, but this is when the world kind of dictates for us. Okay. Extend that here in just a minute. Okay. So, what we're looking at here is we're looking at, look, from an application perspective, right? True weakness, right? Shit. Okay. Whoa, 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 hey, 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 hey. Right? That kind of thing, which is the position that a lot of martial artists get into because they don't want to train with reality in mind because that's too freaking scary, right? They want to do it like everybody else, and then the situation turns out to be something they didn't plan on, and so now they look like, piss your pants, shaking your shoes like everybody else because they don't have any tools for that. Okay? So true weakness, right? Operating from messy conditions. Okay, when that guy with those big old freaking jackhammer arms that was drunk off his ass, bigger than me, just trying to just wail on my skull. Very, very messy, right? I was just trying to keep my arms between me and him and keep a good posture so that he couldn't crash through these things. It wasn't, okay, no gosh, and no, right? It felt messy. It felt chaotic, right? But it could also be feigned weakness. Okay, again, projecting distress to bait overcommitment. Okay, this is now what Kyutsu Tenkan Ho, disguising truth and falsehood. Okay, so it could be not only trouble. Okay, but if he decides he's coming in anyway, see, I can make my face look a certain way, I can make my body look a certain way, but in my heart, anything you put in here, I'm gonna fucking break it. But if I look at him like this, right? Well, then he can pull a gun and shoot me. But what if I am terrified? Okay? Fudoshin, application of Fudoshin, emotional regulation, right? Instead of being like this, just control the shaking. Because I know that things will get better as soon as he puts something in here. I just have to wait for it. I have to ride out those nerves. Okay? Instead of looking at him like this, okay? Now I want to look at him like this. See? Okay? So that'll slow a lot of people down. Okay? Kids Tenkan. Okay? What else do I have here? Other things we could do with the whole feigned weakness and all that kind of stuff is appearing tired, appearing fearful or afraid, looking like you're off balance, while inwardly you're calm, you're ready. Right? Okay. There's a name to this, right? We'll talk about this in a minute. I'm out of space, but let's talk about these just before we wrap this up. Okay. And I did promise to come back to this and why the hell this is written this way instead of just telling you the damn secrets. Okay? Anyway, so we've talked about Kyujutsu Tenkan, right? Disguising truth and falsehood. Okay. But I also want to talk about Kage because we have a Kage no Kamae, shadow posture. Okay, Kage is another word for shadow, or it's not literal for ghost, but it can imply like a wisp or an apparition or ghost, or whatever, right? Something that's can be seen, but isn't real. It's not, you can't get a hold of it, kind of thing. Okay. My online screen name in a lot of places for a long time has been Kage 36, Kage 36. Yes, Virginia, it's pronounced Kage, not cage with a K, right? Kage. It points directly to this because one of the alternate names for ninja way back in the day was Kage. 36 is a number that's a power number in ninjutsu because just about any way you work it, you get the number 9. 3 plus 6 is 9. 3 times 6 is 18. Add 1 and 8, you get 9. All kinds of stuff, right? So that goes to a whole other area. All right. And again, we're looking at Kyujutsu, Kage, and Fudoshin in action. Okay. So again, Kyujutsu Tenkan, switching between truth and falsehood. Okay. He should never know what is true. He should never know what's real. Okay. This goes back to that original lesson from Hatsumi Sensei when it comes to ninjutsu. Nothing in ninjutsu is ever what it looks like. If it is what it looks like, then he knows how to defend against it. If it's not what he looks like, or not what he thinks it looks like, right? Like I look like I'm exposed, right? Then he's going to overcommit. He's going to see vulnerability where vulnerability doesn't exist, okay? The omote jumonji that we do in the beginning, right? This bladed thing, the groin's protected, all that kind of stuff, right? But in our mod 3, we get people hira jumonji as well. Well, shit, that's mixed messages. Are you protected? Because your groin looks wide open. Okay? So are you protected or are you not protected? You figure it out. Okay? Not you, the bad guy. It's his job to figure it out, not your job to tell him. Okay? So when we're working with Kyujutsu Tenkan, he should never know what is true, what's a psych out, what's an illusion, what's bait, what's an obvious trap, ever. And we need to be constantly shifting so that things are never the same. Ever. Okay? Kage no Kamae, right? The shadow posture. So this implies whatever's shown isn't real, but we can start working with Kage no Kamae, but it requires that we understand the strategic application and the feel of the Kamae as well as its shape, because all of our Kamae are holistic. There is an outward manifestation, a shape, right, that is directed by the head and the heart. Okay? So if I don't know what that's supposed to be, then how do I hide that? Because trickery can be pretty obvious sometimes. Okay? So Kage no Kamae would be like taking up Hidari Seiga no Kamae, where I'm uber defensive, just, okay? That kind of thing, right? I'm hiding all my targets, right? I'm going to make it as difficult as possible for you to get at me, right? So I'm showing this thing, but in my heart, I'm Jumonji or Kosei no Kamae or Bobi no Kamae, right? Being prepared for an explosion. If you touch me, I will kill you, kind of thing, right? Okay. Kage no Kamae is a direct tactical application of Kyujutsu. Personally, can we split, right, between what we show physically, facial expression, eye movement, body language, and all that, from what's going on in the head and the heart? In the beginning, you do Kokoro no Kamae. Kokoro no Kamae is Kamae of the heart. That is where the body is a reflection of what's going on in the head and the heart. You are authentically, I'm taking up a body position that matches. I will control you with my lead hand and my heart. Okay? You can attack me when I say it's okay, but until then, rot's a ruck. Okay? So if we don't know what that is, if we don't know Kokoro no Kamae, Kage no Kamae is going to be very difficult. Okay? And then from a Fudoshin position, right? Fudoshin, unshakable mind, immovable heart, that kind of thing, right? Inner calm, emotional steadiness. This is the stuff that allows you to mask outwardly right? Without losing inward control. Okay. So again, when we're integrating, when all this stuff comes together, Hoko is both shield and snare. It's both a shield and it's a trap. Okay, think about those like furrier traps, right? Open this thing up, put some bait right there. Okay, it's like that. Okay, you look open, okay, and then when he takes the bait, okay, you catch him. Okay, Hoko no Kamae, it can deceive as much as it defends. Okay, so all right, let's go back to this thing here, right? Okay, I want you to think, follow me back through history a little bit. I don't care which side of the pond you're on. Okay, but Japan was no different. When this stuff was put together, you couldn't go to Walmart san or Ya, right? Ya's shop, store. Okay. You couldn't go to Walmart, right? And buy a ream of freaking paper. So you start to write something out. Ah, shit. Just have to scribble it out, start it, crumble it up, toss it away, grab another one. No. Paper was extremely expensive. Right? It was handmade by an artisan. It was very expensive. Right? And ink, you either paid somebody to make some for you, or you had a soot stick and a little grinder and some water just to make a small batch, hour or so, right? So you could dip a brush, paint some kanji, make some more, paint some kanji. Guess what you were doing in your off time if you wrote a lot, right? So it's quite possible that this shorthand is what Hatsumi Sensei said. The scrolls are incomplete. You need the kuden to fill in the gaps. To save ink and paper, we're going to identify the secret that gets applied to everything in the first two. And then by extension, and here's the kuden, this gets applied, gets applied, gets applied. Okay? What's the other possibility? It's left incomplete, so if anybody steals the scrolls, they don't get the secrets. There's 5 Kamae. Migi Seigan, Hinari Seigan, Hoko, Bobi, Hira, no problem. Okay? That wasn't difficult. Okay? So again, paper and ink were expensive, right? Scrolls were often abbreviated, right? They're more like those crib notes or I can't remember the brand name. I remember these things when I was growing up, and I've seen them in bookstores even today. They're like a black and yellow cover, and on the title and stuff, it has whatever the major work is, whether it's Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet or A Tale of Two Cities or whatever. And so the lazy who don't want to read the book will go buy these things for a couple of bucks, and then all the major points are laid out. They're just hoping that they can get the gist of the major points. So when questions about those things pop up on a test, they can pass the test. Okay? Scrolls are like that, right? Scrolls are abbreviated not because they were instructional manuals for the beginners. They were reminders for those already initiated. Okay? So, again, the abbreviation can go in all kinds of different directions, right? But again, Seigan lists right and left explicitly. Right? But the other Kamae, they assume duality without spelling it out. Okay? Remember Hatsumi Sensei's reminder, right? Densho is shorthand. Okay? It's incomplete by design. Right? And the holes have to be filled in by kuden. Okay? So I'm sorry for anybody that thinks that they can go to YouTube and learn everything there is to know about a technique or whatever by just watching videos or going to Scribed or some of these other places where people have either purposely uploaded things or other shitheads have stolen things, and not that I know personally about these things, and then uploaded things or made it a part of their little piece of work, right? And then people can just get an $8 a month or $12 a month subscription, or get a freebie, download these things, and right, then feel like they've got everything they need. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Like Cliff Notes for Shakespeare, or whatever, right? Bullet points are there, but there's no depth. It's just a reminder, right? Only oral transmission gives the full picture. Okay? All right. So, again, if we look at this from a strategic and psychological perspective, right? Hoko is not just a defensive posture. It is a strategy of control and deception. Right? Every kamae exists on a sa-yu, left, right, or migi, hidari, right, left, continuum. Controlled ideal, messy, chaotic, and we need to be able to easily shift between those states because fights and attacks shift between those states. Everyday life shifts between those states. Having a good time, binge watching Netflix, eating bonbons, whatever. And next thing you know, you get a call from a family member who's shit in a breadbasket because they got themselves into a side warrant, whatever. And shit, right? Got to go into action, or I got to make a couple of phone calls, or I missed a bill. I mean, not me, but right. We all have our little things, right? And next thing you know, we've got to navigate the chaos and the mess, or the screaming kid, or whatever it is, right? And then try to navigate that and maintain control of it until, right, I actually have control and I've reestablished equilibrium. And it's life. Another one's going to come around just a couple of minutes. Okay, that's why we wear this. Okay, it's not just a theory. It's not just academic. Okay, so mastery is not avoiding the messy side. Okay, it's being able to operate in both. Okay, and even right at the upper levels in ninjutsu, even be able to mask one while living in the other. I'm okay with people seeing the fat old bald guy that can't possibly know anything. You know what kind of power, what kind of position that puts me in? Right? So, again, I learned multiple levels or multiple forms of Hoko. I've seen people do this. One of my students came back from a seminar they had gone to, and they were doing a technique collectively with this Doko no Kamae, right? And they're looking around and they're asking a couple of black belts, like, which Doko is this? Because I'm looking around the room and some people are doing Doko like this, which is very similar to a Hoko Ryū Soko no Kamae. They're doing this one, they're doing this one, they're right. And like all these black belts are like, well, you can pretty much do any of them. They're all right. That's true. From that position, they're all right. From that position, all but one or two are wrong because they're not adapted to the particular situation or the technique or the way we're controlling that bubble to make it easy to regain or maintain control. Okay, so this is no different. Okay, so again, there's the wet blanket controlling the bubble. Letting him know anything you put in here, I'm going to break it. Right, it's mine. Okay, it's kind of like a cat that's catching a piece of yarn or whatever, and everything it's doing is to pull it in and get a hold of it. That's Hoko. Okay, so that's this sense around, smothering, open trap kind of thing, right? But there's also the forearm protecting variation, right? There's the enlarging size for intimidation variation, right? Their arms in near doko position variation. There's the, blinder kind of variation, right? So each version shows how kamae flexes with conditions, okay? And it reinforces the lesson that form follows function, right? I had this conversation with a teacher a long time ago about how the kamae developed, because one of my students asked me and we came up with answers based on what I already knew. And he said most people get this answer, they get this wrong. They think that kamae, because they're taught to beginners and they're taught as basics, were invented first and then techniques grew out of those. But that's backwards. The strategies and tactics and ways of controlling a situation that are the secrets of each lineage come first. Techniques for how to accomplish that then are developed. And then the Kamae are at the forefront, right? They're the tip of the spear. Okay? This is a strategic, tactical piece to make the technique and that overall strategy as easy as possible to execute. Kamae were developed last as a way to make the fulfillment of the lineage's strategies and tactics easier. They weren't just invented out of space. I mean, technically, they were. However, you get the idea. Okay? So, again, I mentioned this earlier. Kamae is not just physical. It's a mindset, right? It's a projection, and it's a psychology, right? So life is a parallel. These things run, right? Sometimes you're in control. Some things in your life you're absolutely in control of, right? Sometimes things are chaotic. Some things you're struggling to just keep your head above water, and you'd rather hang out in those areas where you got complete control, your hobbies and those kind of things, right? But other parts of your life are that, right? Sometimes you wear a mask, right? You can't throat punch the guy at work that needs to be throat punched and whatnot. So you smile or you avoid him or whatever, right? So you don't get fired and you can't feed your family. And see, okay, what's wrong, honey? Nothing. I'm good. Okay. Always, always, you need to anchor yourself with Fudoshin so that in those different states, you're not off balance. You're not shaken. Okay. So anyway, wrap this up. Hoko no Kamae reveals the hidden lesson of Sayu, left, right. Okay. This Migi Hidari, two sides to the same thing, right? Our kata are this way as well. Okay. They have a left side, right side, tiger realm, dragon realm kind of way to apply them. Okay. One, you're in absolute control. You can move around like Hatsumi Sensei. Everything's going well. And the other one, it's either you're fighting for your life and struggling to maintain equilibrium or to get back to equilibrium, or it's just this overwhelm of ferociousness and emotion that's leading that needs to get this damn thing over with. Okay. So it's the same thing, right? It's not just Kamae. The kata are this way, life is this way. Okay. So, but this hidden lesson of Sayu is that every posture, every technique has two sides. Okay. Not just right, left, but ideal versus chaotic, control versus flinch response, truth versus a mask. Okay. So, my challenge to you for this week, if you so choose to accept it, right, is to reflect on your training. Okay. Do you only practice the ideal side? Okay. How would you function from the messy one? Can you mask one while standing in the other? Okay. So I will actually be out of town starting Friday, right? So I've got classes and everything tomorrow. I've got instructors covering things for me for about 14 days, maybe a little bit longer than that, 14, 15 days. This weekend, this Saturday, I will be in Syracuse, New York, at Lemoyne College teaching a one-day seminar, Taijutsu, sword, and integrating certain mindsets, Mushin, Fudoshin, Heijoshin, Zanshin, those kind of things into the application to make things just work better, right? And then after that, my wife and I are going out of the country. We're going to take a little cruise, and hopefully I'll come back with sand still sucking my toes, no matter how many showers I took, and a little bit more refreshed, and I can hold on to my manly tan for as winter starts setting in. Start losing things, right? So, but this Friday's class, you'll be working with Shidoshi Whistler, right? The highest ranking Shidoshi that I have, seventh dan. And in that class, you can physically explore Hoko, right? He's going to be doing more with this, right? So there's the URL right there, the Hoko Trapping Masterclass. Is that what that says? Hoko Trapping. Yeah, Hoko Trapping Masterclass, right? So if you go to that page, get the information, register for the class unless you're already in my Ninpo Masterclass program, or you're one of the Inner Circle students. You're in Shinobi Kai, Ninpo Mastery, Ninpo Elite, one of those programs, in which case you're already in. So just show up for class. Right? So anyway, he'll have you practicing Hoko variations under different conditions. And I don't know, he's kind of free to work that class and whatnot, but he may work in some drills, those kind of things, to turn apparent weaknesses into tactical control, that kind of stuff, right? So trying to make it, right? Even though I'm not the one teaching it, he is an expert at, and just his whole demeanor, right? Everybody in the dojo says he's scarier than me because he looks like he's just this really young, calm, content person. But he, until he gets a hold of people, and his face still doesn't change. He still has the same smile on his face, right? Anybody who knows the Japanese master teachers, and you know Shirai Sensei, Shoshi Whistler is very much like Shirai Sensei. Okay, so anyway, hope this helped. If you have any questions, anything like that, right? Even the negative things, I welcome the negative comments as well, even the dumbass flaming ones where somebody makes a whatever comment. And here's the ninja side of me that loves why I love those things and why I don't delete them, right? The platform algorithms can't tell the difference between a compliment and an asinine remark. So if you're going to compliment, or if you're going to comment in a douchey way, I'm going to thank you because the algorithm thinks that my stuff is valued and liked by everybody. You can't tell the difference. So by all means, drop them in there. My stuff will end up getting shared with everybody else. Otherwise, if you do want to help me out, leave some comments, like, share, subscribe, right? It helps us out. It helps other people out by the platform sharing it more with them. And it helps you out because the platforms know that you're specifically interested in this. So when I put something else out, you get notified. Okay? All right, that's it. I will talk to you again when I get back, right? So I will be back. I don't know if there's going to be a Whiteboard Wednesday then. There won't be anything between now and then. Kuden, Whiteboard Wednesdays, or whatever. At the very least, October 1st. If not, it'll be the week after that. Right. So hopefully I'll see you in the process, or somewhere in the interim. And don't forget to train while I'm gone. Okay. I'll talk to you later.